Buju, Wago Shindagu, Migizi and Dodem, Gazaga Squaji Mekag, Indun Jaba.
I'm very honored to introduce Dr. Anton Troyer. So Dr. Troyer is a professor of Ojibwe over in Bemidji State University, and he is an author of many, many books. He serves on many organizational boards and has received numerous prestigious awards and fellowships. In 2018, he was named Guardian of Culture and Lifeways and was a recipient of the Pathfinder Award by the Association of Tribal Archives, Libraries, and Museums. His equity, education, and cultural work has put him on a path of service around the nation and the world. So please give him a hand. A few years ago, last year, Dr. Troyer actually was a speaker at our virtual session. So it's really cool to be here with him. And as you guys know, there is, for this session, we'll go ahead and just have Dr. Troyer come up and start. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you. Buju, Wagosh, Indigenous cause.
Gijigukwe Indigu.
Welcome to
Ojibwe Word of the Day.
Ikwe. Ikwe. Buju, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me today. It's really an honor to be in community with all of you and to think about all of the really inspiring work that has been going on through the years and over the past few days. There is incredible opportunity in front of all of us and incredible challenges too. Kwe maji tayan niwi Ojibwe Mbangi da winda munugu gawian wagosh indigu minawa migizi and dodem. Wasawadi wishkonigan wenjabayan, Gazaga squaji mekag, Mima wenjabayan, Minawa nimin wenda mapaji as wabandi young. So excited to be here. I'm almost to the point now where I have the president and deans at Bemidji State University convinced that when somebody calls and asks for the Department of Foreign Languages to send them to the English department. And if somebody wants something else, they can come see me. I just wanted to add to the wonderful introduction, and thank you for that. My native name is Wagosh, that means fox. In our tribe, we have a clan system where there are animals, birds, and fish that kind of double as a symbol for your family, as well as a spiritual guide of sorts. I'm from the Eagle clan, come from Leech Lake, and it's amazing, you know, as Indigenous people, well, we are incredibly diverse and incredibly complex. I get to live in a place where, I don't know, my relatives have been buried in the same place longer than America's been a country. And it feels different. And I think that connection to place is one of the defining features of what it means to be Indigenous, even though 50% of our enrolled tribal citizenry lives off reservation and 70% of the self-identified Native population lives off reservation. So as Indigenous people, we are urban and rural, reservation and not. And of course, in the home visiting universe, you've been trying to figure out how do we connect and how do we deal with all the different kinds of diversity that is out there. It is tough work and it is so complex. Even just getting a contract with a tribe, if you want to go to Coche de Pueblo and do that, there's a religious leader called a war captain who will appoint the governor and lieutenant governor for the Pueblo. That's who you talk to. And if you want to go to some of the other reservations, well, one of the Tewa ones, they now have a democratically elected governance structure, and that's who you talk to. And if you want to go to Red Lake, there's a line of traditional hereditary chiefs sitting with the democratically elected representatives, and they expect to see your body in front of them before they'll talk about a contract. And in Mille Lacs, they'd say, why are you sending anything to the tribal government? We have a separate corporate commission to deal with this, right? You might develop simple literature about nutrition, and you have a food pyramid. And you go out to the Southwest, and for some of the tribes, eating fish is taboo. And they'll be like, these people don't know us at all, right? Then you go over to the Northwest coast, and if you take fish off the food pyramid, they'll be like, they don't know us at all. And if you go to the Great Lakes and you ask, they'll be like, why are they asking us? It's silly, right? So important to understand the different kinds of tribal structures and the different kinds of tribal cultures. And what I'm hearing about this gathering is that there have been some great opportunities to learn not just about the science and the data-driven understandings of what healthy moms and babies need, but also some cultural grounding and understanding in those very same things. So that's really exciting. And to see the conversations broadening out and the opportunities to connect with one another and learn from one another. I think, if there were a silver bullet solution to the problems we're dealing with, somebody would have used it a long time ago. It is hard work, and it is exactly the kind of work that you've been doing here. What I thought I would do, I was in the virtual session for those who were able to join. I think that was maybe the majority, but not everybody. Previously, we were doing different kinds of work. And I think what I would like to do with my time here today is share a little bit more on the culture and personal side to speak to the broader arc of this kind of work. We're all in this room because we love humans. We love kids, and we want to see them equipped with their best chance at a long, healthy, happy life. There are certain things everybody could agree that kids are going to need to have their best shot at a long, healthy, happy life. All right? Healthy food, safety, proper, attentive medical care and guidance, things like this. But also, it is sometimes hard to see exactly what everybody needs because we are so different. We have to lead this quest at the same time that we have to be listening to everyone we are there to serve. And we can't just be running through a protocol worksheet or a checklist, even though people give us checklists. And there's a lot of stuff we have to do. And we have to ask some questions over and over and over again, even though they can be quite off-putting when we're drilling into somebody's world about substance abuse and things like that. And so I'd like to speak to this larger issue, equipping people with the best chance for a long, healthy, happy life, and to think about the many different kinds of healing that we all need, and that Indigenous people in particular need, since that's the focus of our gathering here. I really think me even being physically alive, much less present, much less able to share an Ojibwe word of the day, is really pretty remarkable. The efforts to commit genocide on Native people and then commit cultural genocide on Native people have been so sustained for so long, while all humans have trauma somewhere in their family tree. And we all are dealing with the epigenetic imprints of that one way or another. For certain groups of people, it has been so much for so long that the work that everyone in this room is trying to do is especially challenged. But in spite of 500 pretty rough years, here I am. And here's some of my family. So we have 9 kids. If any of you like kids, let me know. We are always hunting for babysitters. We're starting in the grandbaby business. I get to live in my home community, and it is so cool. We do all kinds of things with our crew. Here's one of my sons and one of my granddaughters, and we every year harvest maple sap and cook it down, turn it into maple syrup and sugar, which, by the way, when consumed, does the opposite of what processed sugars do. It inhibits the development of type 2 diabetes. But they know the science of how to get food out of a tree. They know the art and the culture around that. And nobody was really encouraging or supporting that outside of Indigenous families and communities for so long. It's against all odds, and for so many reasons. My grandmother, my mom's mom, who passed away just, a little bit less than 2 years ago at the age of 98, was taken from her parents as a very small child and sent to residential boarding school. And in addition to, growing up in institutions in an English medium space, was separated from the people who loved her and nurtured her. And what's it like when someone's growing up with lots of harsh physical discipline and very little nurture? Especially when so many of our patterns are formed in the very first few years of a person's life. Our ideas about what's healthy, about our sense of security and confidence. So much of that is so deeply, enculturated when we're very, very young. Now, she made it out of there, came back to the res, married a local boy, started a family, but didn't have a lot of favors. My mom, when she was a little kid, grew up with really pretty horrible poverty. They'd even pull all the kids from school. They all had to participate in food production for wild rice harvesting season, for hunting, for fishing. At age 11, she and another 11-year-old were ricing for about 8 hours, brought their food into the boat landing, and a police officer confiscated their entire harvest. For an enrolled member of a federally recognized tribe, on tribal waters, on an Indian reservation, producing healthy food, having it taken away. Go back home, here are your commods, Crazy. When she was pretty young, a car showed up at the house, and 2 social workers got out, and they grabbed her, and they threw her into the vehicle, and they drove her about a little over 20 miles away to a foster home. Her uncles followed the car, and that night tapped on the window, and they broke her out of there. Put her in the back of a station wagon, threw a blanket over her, and said, "Don't get up." And they drove her all the way back to her parents, and that's where she was raised. Among other things, what that means is there was no service of papers, there was no court process, there was no due notification. If there was a court order, somebody would have showed up again and taken her again, right? There was a lot of baby snatching going on. 1 out of 3 Native kids removed from their birth parents, not because 1 out of 3 Native families are, unhealthy places for the raising of Native kids. Within this month, we will be hearing from the Supreme Court the fate of the Indian Child Welfare Act. It's beyond the purview of everything I'll be able to do with you today. I'd encourage you to check out the podcast series, This Land. Season 2 has a detailed deep dive into everything going on around the litigation regarding the Indian Child Welfare Act. But a couple of the things are worthy of note. The Indian Child Welfare Act, by the way, itself provides a right for tribal governments to intervene in social service actions that impact their kids, and has a series of placement protocols if a Native kid is removed from their home so that they can be placed into relative foster care or with another family from that tribe or another Native family as first preferences. So that if a kid is removed from their home, at least they don't have to be removed from their culture or their language and so forth. But it's all going to be decided here in the next few weeks. And I think a couple of the telling things If anyone was around in the 1980s, you may remember there was a stream of little children being taken from Vietnam, China, India, and Pakistan, making it to adoptive placements in America. And they shut off the spigot. So the adoption industrial complex all of a sudden had a lot fewer babies to negotiate and have actively worked to undermine the purpose and function of foster care, which is to support and encourage the rehabilitation of families that have been stressed, and instead have encouraged prospective adoptive parents to get licensed as foster care parents and fight against the reunification of the family. These organizations are the ones that have been funding the battle. Also, the cases before the Supreme Court are being litigated by fossil fuel attorneys, because close to 70% of the fossil fuel reserves in America are on tribal land, and tribes are effective opponents to their extraction and development. It's that simple. Couple states, Minnesota, California, and there may have been others working on this in the past few weeks that I don't know about, have been trying to develop state statutes that would replicate some parts of the Indian Child Welfare Act so that if it is significantly undermined, it won't be as negatively impactful on some of those families. But that is a tough political lift in many other places, and there's a lot at stake. So it's just important to be aware of that one. It's unlikely that I should be here too. This is a picture of my father when he was a little kid, because my father, born in Vienna, Austria, was an Austrian Jewish immigrant and a Holocaust survivor. And he and two cousins and both of his parents ended up surviving the Nazi Holocaust, and everybody else was killed in the camps, over 300 immediate family members. Really shouldn't be here. Really shouldn't have, my language or culture or anything like that. But I do. And there are a lot of reasons why, and I'm going to share a little bit about a couple of the reasons, because they do intersect with your work. Also, I think it's important that we understand, there's a tendency in any kind of work towards, for, or outreach to Native communities, towards the Jesus complex, towards paternalism, towards we are going to be the saviors for these poor people. And of course, the Native experience is not simply one of tragedy and loss. And as Native people, we are right where we should be, having been through all of the crap that we have been through. We are not less than if somebody didn't get to grow up with their language handed on a silver platter, or steeped in our cultural traditions. So I always like to tell people that you are a complete, fully realized human being, a soul who has a body. We're actually not humans looking for a spiritual experience. We are spirits having a temporary human experience. And you are the one that your ancestors were waiting for and praying for through the generations. You've been given a unique set of gifts, and you yourself are a gift to the world. There's home, Leech Lake, epicenter of the universe right there. I hesitate to show economic data on Bina because it can reinforce one of those stereotypes which says we're all living in squalor on a reservation somewhere. I'd recommend the TED Talk by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, The Danger of a Single Story, which among other things says that the problem with stereotypes is not that they are incorrect so much as they are incomplete, and they leave you with a single story to understand the experience of a whole group of people, and we will usually get it wrong. Tribal economies employ 1.1 million people, pay out $49.5 billion in employee compensation, and have a gross economic output of $127 billion a year. Be nice to natives, you'll probably end up working for one someday. In 1969, 57% of the native population lived below the poverty line. Today, 27% of the native population lives below the poverty line. Now, 27% is gross, right? It is unacceptable. We need a major intervention. For Native people, the Great Depression, like when we had a 15% unemployment rate, that was the Great Depression. For us, that Great Depression started at the start of the treaty period and it's never ended. And at the same time, we just shaved 30 whole percentage points off of Indigenous poverty, which is the highest growth rate for any racial group in the country. Not because of a big government intervention, which has yet to happen, but because tribal people did that for themselves. That is impressive. And so it's important that we are careful about pity and paternalism. If you want to learn how to interrupt poverty, we should be learning from Native people, not assuming we got all the answers and we're going to come in and give them to them. Right? Anyone got a growth rate like that? Then you can give us the lecture. Right? At the same time, with economic data, with neonatal health and infant mortality data, there is plenty of work to do to equip people for those long, healthy, happy lives. That's why we're here. When my mom went to school, she met one professional Native person ever. Her entire childhood, only one Native person with a degree doing something in a professional space. She grew up on a res. That one person was the school nurse. And she finished high school and she thought, maybe I can do that. Went to nursing school. And then when she finished nursing school, one of her first jobs was working for our tribe's health program. Doing what many of you in this room are doing, going out, house to house, and talking to people about vaccinations and health and all kinds of things. And she could see then, and even said, I can't believe it. We're here on a reservation, and even here, our people are getting pushed around. She went back to school, got a law degree, and became the first female Native attorney in the state of Minnesota. So when I was a kid, she'd bring me with her to school or to the court, and she'd say, you sit there and don't say a word. So I'd sit there and not say a word. And I can't remember her cases, but what I remember most was that she was the only woman in court. And she was the only Native in court. And I came walking out of there thinking, you know what? We can do stuff. What a big difference the D in DEI makes, having representation. Every one of you is an ambassador for yourself, for your family, for your community, for your race, for your gender, for your profession. Be a good one. This is why it makes a difference who's on the team, right? The all-male gender equity team is missing some vital perspectives and the optics aren't so good. The all-white racial equity team is also missing vital perspectives and the optics aren't so good. The demography for who is doing the work does not reflect the demography of who we are trying to outreach to and serve. And it makes such a difference when you get people on the team. Then you don't have to go find somebody and check and make sure we got the idea right, or go get somebody's buy-in for the idea that we've already conceived and cooked up, because oftentimes the process by which you come up with the idea is even more effective for generating the buy-in, community engagement, and cultural relevancy of whatever we're trying to do. When we're just looking at a data set, we forget all of that, and we miss all of that. And there's so many ways it can go wrong, even with the very best of intentions. I had the idea when I finished high school. I think a lot of high schoolers have this idea. I'm going to get out of town and never come back. I got into Princeton University. I thought, hooray, I've escaped the brambled racial borderland of my youth. You know? And the first person I met said, dude, are you Native? Where's your tomahawk? And I remember thinking, oh no, The brambled racial borderland will follow me everywhere I go. And of course it does. I finished college with the idea that I'm going to go home and never leave. In the long run, that is exactly what I did. I probably freaked my parents out. I said, I know I have an Ivy League education, but I'm not taking a job. And I am not going to grad school. I said, I'm going to come home, I'm going to hang out with my elders, I'm going to walk the earth, I'm going to spend time with our language and culture. And they said, that sounds beautiful. Good luck paying for that because we are done. I did it anyways. Right? In part, as I think back, like watching my mom, like, so what if she's the only woman in court? Do it anyways. Why am I going to let somebody else tell me no? You know? And so there was a lot of empowerment from just those simple things. Met this guy, the late Archie Mose, who was born in 1901. He was 12 the first time he met a white man. He was in his 30s the first time he met a black man or saw a car. When I went to see him, I thought he'd be sitting in a wigwam praying for world peace. He was sitting in a little modern house watching WWF SmackDown on a TV. And it's not what I was expecting. But I came in, and he shut off the TV, and he said, oh, I've been waiting for you. So waiting for me? How? You don't even know who I am. And he had a dream about someone, and I looked like this person in his dream. And for him, that was enough. He said, yeah, I'll sleep on the couch. I stayed on his couch. About 6 a.m, get up, get my drum, put it in that car. You got to drive me somewhere. Okay. So I was this gopher, go for this, go for that. But that's all I wanted. It was like Forrest Gump when he realized he could run. After that, every time he went somewhere, he was running, and he never thought it would take him anywhere, but it sure did. And it was kind of like that for me with my cultural journey with Archie, although there's much more to say about it. Through that, I had an immersive experience in our language and in our culture, and it was truly transformative for me. When my first kid was born, or actually still in utero, of course I was terrified. Like, how do I do this job? And what do I need to know culturally about this job? So I went to Archie and I said, what do I do? And he had a whole list of things that I needed to do. Well, you need this medicine. It's called Namewashk. And you take that medicine, you bring it right to the hospital. If you got to go to a hospital, you get some hot water out of the tea machine, you make a tea. Use that for the baby's first bath. Better yet, you could just have that baby at home, And so this is where it was starting. I was like, Namewashk. What's Namewashk? Well, it's got a purple flower. The leaves are light green on the top and are kind of dark green. It's like going, oh my word. So he took me out into the woods, and I demonstrated the full breadth and depth of my ignorance as I ran him one purple flower after another. And he's like, no. That one's thistle, no. And he's just laughing at me. I found at least 20 different purple flowers. Finally, I found it. And he's like, that's the one. Take a picture of that, smell it, pick some for your girl. You're going to need it more. He wasn't wrong about that. And so there was like an Ojibwe cultural birthing go bag. He said, that afterbirth, you bring that home. Don't let those medical people do experiments on that. That goes by a tree. Now, we use a maple tree. It's a tree of life. That'll give her a long life. So I was like, okay. So I had all these different things that I had to do. And then when my first kid came, we did all of those things. So chase the nurses away from wiping off the vernix or doing the bath. That was my job, Could identify all of her birthmarks. And this one actually had hair on her butt when she was born, so we never let her forget that. And, all the different things, right? And the most important thing for a parent happened, which is you fall in love with your kid, because then you're motivated to do whatever that kid needs. And then I was thinking, how do I make sure she doesn't have to struggle the way my grandma did, or my mom did, or even me hunting for language and culture? So I said, I'm only speaking Ojibwe to this kid. And I remember when she was like 2, wakes up in the middle of the night, and she's bawling around, and I'm like, yes, it's working, it's working. And like, flash forward to maybe 4 years old, I had to bring her with me everywhere. So I had to give a keynote address at this language conference. And she was literally like running in circles around the podium. Finally, her little voice picks up on the mic and says, Hingy boogid, which means I farted. And so the whole place was loving that. They were laughing and laughing. They couldn't hear anything else I had to say the rest of the day. But they were all talking. You hear that little girl, she was speaking Ojibwe. Something's really happening here. What's going on? I should have given her the mic to begin with. You know? Today, she's all grown up and she's working with elders in Mille Lacs, translating and transcribing stories, teaching Ojibwe. And it's pretty cool. It is possible to restore not just an institutionally supported, but an intergenerational transmission of Indigenous languages and cultures. And it's happening in many ways, and in many places, and in many forms. It means everything. We sometimes think that connection or culture or whatever, it's out there over the next hill if we can just find it. But it's right here inside of us. The work is not just outward facing, but it's introspective too. Connection and culture live inside of us, and having a rich cultural life is not just about looking out and looking for, it's about looking within. And we can do that wherever we live. And the awakening is healing and empowering. The late, great Anna Gibbs. When my last kid was coming, I thought I was a pro at the dad job. Right? I had my Ojibwe birthing go bag, had my Nemewashk already harvested, had something to bring home the placenta. We were ready to go. And everything in my wife's body said, this baby is going to be like, baby's here, done. You know, like, it's going to be awesome. And nothing went according to plan. So, you know, I had called on the phone, and her mom and sister arrived at the hospital about the same time we did. Babysitters descended on the house. Everything's going well. And then she needed a cesarean section, and baby was born, but like super jaundiced. And, you know, all the other kids would like wake up bawling and wanting to breastfeed. And it seemed like this kid, she still weighed 20 pounds at age 2. Right? And so she was just really slow with everything. And she actually slept. It seemed like she slept for about 6 months, actually, after she was born. And I'd called Anna. I was like, Anna, what do we do? You know, she was not one to like, you know, massage emotions. She just would let me have it. And so she said, what are you freaking out for? You know what to do. Use that medicine for that baby's bath. Take that placenta. Go home and put it out by the maple tree. Do your prayers. Have some faith in our stuff. She's going to be fine. She'll be more than fine. I know. I already had a dream for her Indian name. And so, okay, I'll do what you say. You know, so it took a little while for me to gather everybody, you know, for her naming ceremony. When she did, Anna had this amazing dream about this woman, tall, bigger than life, eagles perching on her arms, shoulders, head. She said, I'm going to name your baby Chiogima Binesikwe. That means big boss eagle woman. I was like, awesome. And it was like, I swear that ceremony like awakened something in our kid. After that, she woke up. Then she wouldn't let anybody else sleep because she was busy laughing, cooing, crying, talking, crawling, walking, and all the things. Of all my kids, you know, everybody knows she's utterly dauntless. When we finally sent her to school, I was telling my wife, I said, this is going to go fine as long as the teacher does exactly what she's told. A couple years later, and more recently, here too, the relevancy of the cultural supports, the connections between generations, what that did. And although nobody in this room needs to be somebody's private, you know, medicine man or whatever, we can foster, encourage, and support these kinds of connections, the ceremonies and things like that that mean so much to people. A lot of us are really hungry for it. A lot of our expectant mothers and kids, they're so hungry for it. It awakens them, it empowers them, it pulls people together across generations. And so including an understanding of that hunger and having a protocol and a practice that is adapted to and inclusive of the cultures for the communities that we are serving. Understanding that Indian country is a diverse place. There's a diversity of faith traditions, right? Oklahoma is predominantly Baptist and Methodist, right? Places like Panema, Minnesota, where Anna Gibbs is from, no one has ever been baptized. 100% traditional Ojibwe religious belief and funeral practice. It's not going to be the same for every person or every person in the same community. But being able to accommodate, not just as a personal choice, do whatever you want on that, but to fold this understanding into our practice. And regardless of religious choices, people may still be very interested in different cultural applications and groundings. And so to be adaptive and open and inclusive of that is very, very helpful. Really shouldn't be here for so many reasons. Like, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does echo. And with this particular kid, my son Elias, the number one job for a parent is like, don't mess your kid up, right? And you don't get any do-overs, so it's totally terrifying. And when this kid was an infant in arms, his mother fell into the darkness, the kind of darkness that everybody has to deal with one way or another in this line of work. She got into drugs and all that kind of stuff. And I'm looking at this kid like an infant in arms who, even to this day, has no memory of being held by his mom. So he is the recipient of the kind of blessings and curses that only a father can bestow. What do I do? How do I help him? How do I not mess him up? Right? His mom, by the way, still alive against all odds. But I live in a big, beautiful house surrounded with all these kids and grandkids and life, and she is literally homeless. Tried everything to reach her and help her. So here too, I found that the grounding in culture, connection, and community is what really got us through. So we had little ceremonies. We have one where we build a miniature wigwam and we put little offerings in there for each member of the family. And it's kind of like keeping you together under one house. And so we'd do this ceremony, and he'd be running around playing in the woods. He'd go over there and look at it. And he'd smile and he'd run off and play. And it was like, seemed to reassure him, And then we had another one. We had a house blessing ceremony. And some people do these. There's cultural variation to how these are done. But we hung a little feather on the southwest corner of the house. I said, when the storms come around, then this will protect us and keep us safe. So sometimes it starts storming. He'd run outside, do a loop around the house, check on the feather, and run back in soaking wet. I was like, well, it's reassuring him. But he turned out fine, by the way. A very outgoing kid. Actually, when I was heading out on this trip, he's 19 now. So he and his 21-year-old brother did some research and identified only one state in America that lets you push a 16-year-old out of a perfectly good airplane. So they took the 16-year-old and went to Utah to go skydiving. And then they're like, and we want to see the ocean. They drive to California. That's where they're at right now. Crazy and impulsive, but it's cool to see your kids loving each other. In any event, I'm like, everybody comes home alive. Nobody breaks the law. You got to at least give me that much. And so There were all the crazy kid antics and stuff like that. Like, we have a lot of great stories. My kids would just terrorize every buffet that I took them to. So I'd say, put us in the back, like as far away from real humans as you can. And the kids would come to the front to go to the bathroom, and they would run through the restaurant screaming, I took a crap! I took a crap! Woo! And people are like, huh? And one time I was trying to get his coat on him. He had fists, couldn't get his fists through the coat. I was like, all right, baby, what's in your hands? I got the mac and cheese. And he's like trying to steal 2 cents worth of mac and cheese from the buffet. It's like, how can they be so resi? Anyways, me being maybe a little anxiety prone, start thinking, oh no. Does this mean he's going to have like food insecurities? Like his mom can be taken, so anything can be taken. So now he's going to be like hiding candy bars between the mattresses and stuff like that, right? But he's turned out fine. He got super outgoing and got into music. And so like show choir and stuff like that. So like Glee, I had to watch that whole series Glee with my kids, like every episode. It's like, oh my God, the drama, I just couldn't take it. But when the kid was signing up for this, I said, it's going to be just like that show. So like all your friends who are dating people at the start of the school year, they're all going to switch by the end of the school year. And then I said, there's going to be a lot of crying, and there's going to be a lot of hugging, and there'll be a big fat trophy at the end of the year. It'll be awesome. He's like, shut up, Dad. It's not going to be like that. You don't know. It's like, okay. And I had to miss his first out-of-town meet, so he calls me. I said, doesn't matter if it's midnight, 1 a.m. So I get the like after midnight call, which I wish I could have recorded. It was so cool. It started out with, Dad, I love you. So I got like a dozen spontaneous I love yous out of a teenage boy, which was awesome. And he's like, Dad, I love you. We won. I love you, Dad. I was like, I love you too, my boy. He's like, everybody's crying. They're all hugging each other. I was like, I told you. And so things seemed to be going pretty well. And then, of course, like the pandemic and like show choir is canceled and prom is canceled and your social life is canceled and blah. And I don't know, the boys and girls, like seems like the girls would mature earlier and they'd usually have a good fight with my wife. They have to break with authority. It's actually healthy that they do this. The boys would usually have it out with me, but it's a little bit later. So like age 17 is a tough time to do that because that's also like launch plans and stuff like that. But I had to push him a little bit. I said, look, kid, there are 1,000 definitions of success, and you don't have to pick anything I come up with, but you got to pick something. So what's it going to be? My job's to support you. If you are interested in coaching, I'm happy to do it. That's not a requirement, but you got to have a plan. So he's moping around for a while and finally said, well, I was thinking maybe I'd go to Dartmouth. I said, well, that's awesome. And there's that momentary, like 7% of the people who apply to that school get in, and what if he's disappointed? But my job is to support, not to close doors in his face. So of course, I support you. And he had to write essays, and he wrote about all of the stuff that I shared with you. Like, he's really close with my dad, so he talked about historical trauma. He talked about his mom, times when he was mad, times when he was sad, times when he couldn't feel anything at all, except maybe a little guilty because he couldn't feel anything. And then he said some really profound things for a teenager. He said, we are more than the sum of our tragedies. And all this trauma, it stops with me. That was pretty crazy coming out of a teenager.
Let's go! Oh, I'm so happy for you. Oh, my boy. I didn't think I was going to make it. Oh, I miss
Let's
you.
go! Come here, Evan!
Of course, for us, that was about much more than getting into the school of your dreams. For everybody, how do we equip them for a long, healthy, happy life? And there have been times people said things like you saved those kids or you pulled them out of the darkness or whatever, but it never felt quite right. That in fact, it was kind of the other way around. Like every time he was running around in the woods and looking at that bear smoke and putting a smile on his face or, singing through everything, he was restoring my faith in the decency of human beings, in our resiliency, in our ability to overcome any obstacle. I didn't save him at all. He saved me. There's so many people working so hard trying to answer the question, can we scale this up? And there are folks doing it. The Hawaiians, the ancient Hawaiian custom, even though it's different from what we do in Ojibwe country, was that when a baby was born, and about a week later the stub of the umbilical cord falls off, they would go out to the lava beds and they would carve a divot like you see on the left here. And they put the stub of the umbilical cord there, put a rock on top. And they'd remember their spots. And they'd come back when the next kid was born and put it right next to the next one and the next one. Theirs is a matrilineal culture. When a girl would grow up and become a mother, she'd go to her divot and put a circle around it like you see in that petroglyph there. And it's so cool when you go out to the petroglyphs and there are acres and acres and acres of divots and circles, connecting people to their matrilineal line, to the Aina, Mother Earth. And they have a little, custom. Babies should be close to their moms. When a kid grows up a little bit, they're a few years older, they can go to school and learn about the rest of the world, but they should stay on their island. When they're all grown up and they're adults, they can go out and represent the people to the world, but when they're elders, they should return to their island. And they talk about this word, maoli, which means spiritual fire. And the goal is the transmission of spiritual fire, that a well-tended fire grows strong and a neglected fire grows weak. They too have been through the colonization and all the crap. Their language was illegal for use in public schools 30 years ago. And they came up with a novel idea. Well, I shouldn't say completely novel, because the Maori really pioneered this, but they're connected to their Maori, brothers and sisters, and said, we want to do this in America. And today, Hawaiian is one of the official languages for the whole state of Hawaii. They went from only 1,000 speakers left to 24,000 speakers. And it all started with the babies. They said, we will take our best speakers and culture carriers, and we will put them with the youngest kids, changing diapers and singing songs in the daycare program. And then the next year, we will add on an early childhood program. And we will stay with these kids and grow this out. They've grown it out all the way so you can go to school K-12 and even get a college degree, all with Hawaiian as the language of instruction. They have a very culture-based approach when they do things. Like these little kids at the early childhood program, when they come to school, the whole staff's waiting outside in rows. Of course, it's warm there. I'm from Minnesota. But then the kids have to line up facing the staff, and the first thing they do is they sing in the Polynesian tradition, asking for permission to come in the school. And then when the staff feels they're sincere, they sing back. And then every kid gets a hug from everybody who works there every single day, aloha, which means hello, goodbye, and I love you. It's so different. In the mainstream, you'd be like, are you serious? Like 45 minutes on cultural enrichment at the start of the day? The kids are awake, make them do math. But even with the high school kids, they have a 100% graduation rate. If anyone else in this country has data like that, then again, you can give us the lecture. But if somebody's figuring something out, maybe we should pay more attention to that. It's cool when they onboard a kid. They say, we don't onboard kids, we onboard a family. And they have a powerful exchange of kind of pledges between them. Everybody gathers, they pick medicines together, weave a giant lei that goes over the door to the school. And the parents have to say, we are entrusting to you our most sacred human being, our daughter. And we are asking you to accept her into your ohana, to love her like your own, to cherish her as if she were your very own, to respect her that way and look out for her well-being. And the school staff have to answer back, we are humbled and honored that you have thought us worthy to receive your most sacred human being. We will love her as our own, respect her, and look out for her well-being as our very own. It does so much to get in front of parents warehousing kids at schools and daycares and childhood programs so they can just go to work, and like it does something. And the kids are moving and they're planting taro and whatever. There's so much to talk about how they do that. It's probably for another talk. So there are efforts to scale things up. There's all kinds of healing going on. 87% of the educational standards in America that have anything to do with Indigenous anything are stories from before 1900, which reinforces the concept that we are something that happened in the past. But look at this cool stuff happening right now. Look at this living culture, not just this massacre. Yes, we should understand all of the history. If America's to heal, we need to look at all of this history and own it and remedy that. But this history is not just trauma and tragedy. It's also resiliency and many, many other things. I went to this crazy meeting in Mille Lacs. This is a little bit before the pandemic. And I get to wear a few hats. So one of them, I work with Ojibwe language revitalization. Another one, I work with diversity, equity, and inclusion. I also have to live in my home community because I'm a community servant. I officiate at lots of ceremonies, traditional funerals, things like that. So I couldn't do that somewhere else. But to me, they're like three strands of a braid. They all, reinforce one another. I went to this meeting and they said, we've got overages from grants and some other funds, and we would like to do something meaningful on language revitalization. By the way, Mille Lacs is in central Minnesota, and it's a gaming tribe, and they've been very careful with how they've invested their funds. So they've saved half their money. Now the endowment produces more money than gaming. They bought health insurance for all tribal members. They put spiritual leaders in the clinic with the medical doctors, and people can access their traditional healing pathways and knowledge keepers and culture carriers, as well as modern medicine, and they work together rather than adversarially or dismissive of one another. There's some really different things happening there. And they said, why are we investing our money in a white bank? Like, build our own bank, And they just done some really cool stuff. Put elders in the classrooms with the kids and built dance halls for their ceremonial big drums and all these different cool things. Anyways, I came to this meeting, and at this point in time, they said, we've identified that we only have 25 remaining fluent first speakers of Ojibwe on our whole reservation. But we want to do something real. And we've got a little money. I said, well, how much money are we talking about? And they said, well, it's $14 million. So this turned into like the happiest meeting of my life. And I had a list of things. I said, they're not all going back to school and getting college degrees and coming back and teaching our language and doing all these different things, but they know these things. So what we need to do is leverage their knowledge into other ways of sharing information. And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, let's do Rosetta Stone, which is a language learning application that uses audio, video, talking flashcards, artificial intelligence engine that will correct your pronunciation and grammar as you interact with the app in real time, stuff like that. And I said, let's produce some books. Let's work with the youngest kids. They have an early childhood program there. And let's get their, stuff that will be really useful in a curricular application for them. And if you think about what happens to a kid's mind, when they're very little, they're 3, 4, they're learning like letters, and then 5 years old, they're learning sight words. And sometimes by the end of second grade, kids are into chapter books. Like the explosion into literacy is rapid, ideally, and powerful. So how can we do that in our language? And they said, okay, let's do all of it. So we started to work on all of it. And year 2 of Rosetta Stone came out this year. There'll be another year every year until there's a full 6-year development. Mobilized a team of 50 people who are working all the time on Rosetta Stone. We launched the first 5 kids' books. We actually convinced a modern press to publish the books, even though no one on their staff can read them, because they're in our language. But the trust between different organizations and entities and the communication between the early childhood program, the press, the elders, the tribe, like all this stuff. And there's a lot more to share about how we did this stuff. Like questions came up. What if somebody else gets elected 2 years from now and wants to pull the plug? Why are they spending money on language or something like that? So that we sculpted this contract with punitive escape clauses and things like that, so it'd be impossible to derail the thing. And everything that we thought could happen, somebody tried, but they've not succeeded, So pretty excited about it. And then the pandemic hit, and we had to send a grandkid to every elder's house with a computer and instructions for Zoom. Now, it's been hard for us to do that universe, right? And I called one of the elders. She's like the shortest of the lols, the little old ladies, kind of sitting in the middle here. And so I called up Carol, and she's like, oh, Wagosh, well, I got my coat on. I was going to the casino. I said, casino, it's a pandemic. You're supposed to stay home and be safe. Well, the language is more important. Let's just work. So she sits down, takes off her coat. We start working for a couple hours, and then she says, well, I'm going to the casino now. My niece has been waiting in the car the whole time. But they were pretty dedicated, And so when we were coming out of the pandemic, by the way, that was tough. We lost about 20% of the fluent speakers of Ojibwe during the pandemic. It was no joke, including some of the folks in that picture there. When we came out of it, Joe Nakwanabe on the left with the buzz cut, he's one of the ceremonial drum chiefs there, and he lost a sister and a brother during the pandemic. And I thought he'd say, this is like the toughest time we've ever been through. He got up there and he said something pretty remarkable. He said, we've been through a lot. We've been through a lot the past few years, and we've been through a lot the past few hundred years. But I got to say, seeing all these people coming around, seeing all the things that we're able to produce, knowing that our elders will be teaching our kids our language for hundreds of years to come, I have to say that doing this has been the happiest time of my life. And it's a reminder that there is healing for all of us in this work. It can be gut-wrenching and heart-rending work. I'm watching the clock too, but but at the same time, it can be so healing and so empowering for all of us. There's some of the books. The artists could never keep up with our elders, by the way. When we do this work, we have to be open not just to helping a prospective mother or child navigate the gates and gaps. We have to be open to our own transformation. And the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there's any reaction, both are transformed. We go to the sugar bush now, got our whole family out there. At times we've had 5 generations in the family doing this. They're making offerings at the trees where their placentas are buried, pulling life from the trees of life. I'm kind of handing the baton to my kids and stuff. They can run the show. It's pretty cool. Their books, their tools, their resources. Also, we tend to have this view that there's the Western way and the data-driven responses to the work, and then there's this cultural stuff, which is kind of neat and cool if they can do a little bit of that. But these things can genuinely be integrated in ways that provide meaningful results. We don't live in 2 worlds, we live in 1 world. We don't have to code switch to make it out there. We don't have to maintain a dual consciousness. People from other cultures don't have to sacrifice theirs to enter our world. And we don't have to sacrifice ours to navigate the modern world. We can be exactly who we are, exactly who the Creator wanted us to be, and thrive. I'm going to share one last 2 quick stories before I wrap it up. So I mentioned that my father was an Austrian Jewish immigrant and Holocaust survivor. I'd only been to Austria one time before, and that was when I was a teenager. I went with my dad. And he had spoken German his entire life, including with his mom. And when he got off the plane in Austria, in the German-speaking world, he had a total meltdown and panic attack and crying jags. And he took us around to the places where he had lived and things like that. And we went to concentration camps too. But he was just emotionally raw and having the toughest time when we were there. So I didn't go, I was a kid then, and I was, I was about 17. And I mainly felt mad. There's no way to make it right. There's no way to make it right. Everybody in Austria and Germany might have to learn about the Holocaust, but they all got to have kids and grandkids. And there are millions of people who never got that. How do you ever fix that? There's no fix, right? So I'm not really proud of it, but I probably thought Austrians and Germans equals bad people. I was a kid. I didn't go back again until this summer, and I brought my family. And so we went around. So we went to this place, the Karl Marx-Hof, where my grandfather had taken over the building in protest of the fascist takeover in Austria 4 years before the Nazis. It was kind of precursor to all that stuff. They got shelled by the Austrian army. We went to the Volksschule, where my dad went to school. Still there. We went to their apartment complex. Still there. Remodeled, but looks nice. We went to my grandpa's store. Still there. We went to the Hallstatt Lakes. There's my dark native kids. Well, they're Jewish too, swimming in the waters. And all these, this is where our family used to do their summer vacations and stuff. All these places taken from our family and given to Aryans who still live there in those very buildings and structures now. And we went to concentration camps. Mauthausen, where my grandfather's hiking partner was murdered, among many others. And Dachau. And then we caught up with some friends who had spent a year in Minnesota and actually recorded my father's Holocaust reminiscences, and they're publishing a book of his stuff in German. And they said, well, let us take you around. So we went hiking in the Austrian-Italian Alps. And these people were awesome and hilarious with super memorable laughs and lots of great stories. And we had a lot of great experiences with them. And one night we're having dinner and they said, pretty much everyone in Austria has at least one grandparent who is a Nazi. For us, all of our grandparents were Nazis. For the man, Thomas, he said, my paternal grandparents were unrepentant Nazis. They thought the Nazis did nothing wrong. He said, I'm glad none of their grandkids think the same way. And something shifted a bit in me where, like, we love these guys. It was a lot harder to just be stuck in anger. And it became a little more possible to see the beauty of this place, the beauty of these people, the beauty of that language, and everything they did to my family and the rest of the world. And it helps me thinking about my mom's Native experience and all of the injustices that we have served. It may be a relief to the Germans and Austrians to know that I'm not hating on them so bad, but the biggest gift was to me and my family, that I wouldn't have to carry so much anger, that I wouldn't have to be so easily triggered by the traumas and injustices, that I could find some healing and pass that forward. Not just in conversation and communication, but its epigenetic imprint. We all need this kind of healing. And it does take some work and some reflection and experiences, but it can liberate us all. There's Thomas. And we all need liberation because colonization has been dehumanizing to all of us, no matter what side of it we've been on. Thomas needed healing too. With the work that we do, we cannot just help people get through the gates of the systems. We need new systems. And novelty doesn't make them new. We can put an indigenous face on colonization and still have colonization. In fact, that's how colonization works. Take a bunch of Irishmen, give them guns, put them in the British Army, and have them go kill the other Irishmen, right? Like, that's how it works. So we have to make completely different systems. Ones that can be not just accepting of someone else's culture, but can genuinely support and foster that. My mom got so many questions. My youngest brother's a medical doctor. We usually tease him and call him the loser. Hey. My sister's got a law degree. She's a judge. My other brother's got a PhD. We both publish books. And they'd always ask her, how do you do that? She says, no idea. All I know is that I believe in education. And not just from books. I mean, getting out in the woods and knowing how to make maple syrup and hunt and fish and things like that. Makes all the difference in the world because nothing can stop a Native person who knows who he or she is. That's all right. Missed one, but that's all right. I like the Lila Watson quote. If you've come to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is tied up with mine, then let us work together. And the last one, there's a picture of our family property. I feel like Shrek. That's my swamp. Among things that had happened when my parents were early in their journeys, they acquired this piece of property. If you turn around and look up the hill, where away from the water, it didn't look anything like this. There were no trees there. It was all wide open farm fields. This is my dad on the tractor with my brother. They started planting trees. And they planted all of the trees in that picture there. And it completely changed the entire landscape and the ecosystem. Now, there's just a couple people. Granted, they did have a child labor force. But what a change. Today, every day, I wake up and I get to see this forest. It's so powerful. It makes me think about what a couple people can do. A lot of times we look at the work, like the substance abuse, the poverty, the racism, all the isms, climate change, and we think, not a lot I can do about it. Try to be a decent human, tell my kids to be decent humans. We hope it's enough, and then it never feels like it's quite enough. And all that's necessary for evil to triumph is for us to do too little or nothing. But it's not like we need to take this mountain of problems humans have been making for thousands of years and move that whole mountain right now. It is much more like we need to keep planting the seeds, and it can change everything. And that is the work that every one of you has been doing in your careers, and that every one of you has been doing over these past few days. Connecting, communicating, sharing ideas about different models, cultural applications, and building teams and understandings so we can help these young people have their best chance at a long, healthy, happy life. What a noble endeavor. I'm so glad to be in your company. Thank you very much. Miigwech. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Remember at the beginning of the week, I said that part of my early career was a teacher. So Dr. Troyer saw me giving him the teacher eye. I'm like, that's enough. And he's like, oh. Thank you so much. That was just powerful. And I loved hearing him speak, hearing you speak. And it just reminds me of just clinging on to hope and knowing what are all of these things that are possible, so thank you. So I think we'll have time for just one question. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to ask a question?
I actually do not want to ask a question.
Mm.
And I just want you have the same
Miigwech.
Yes. Anyone else?
There's no way to do it all in one convening.
Yes.
So a couple of things I'll just, very briefly. One is, I hope you keep this going, because there's some good stuff happening here, and a lot of people worked really hard to pull this together. Thanks for watching today. I'm Anton Troyer. Let's keep in touch. I'm active on social media, and my website has lots of information on my books, speaking engagements, resources for the Ojibwe language, teachers, and more. Miigwech.